When she said, "Leo's coming back tomorrow, let's just make this a clean break," I calmly said, "Okay." That night, I exercised my boyfriend's final rites. But as I left in the early morning, I slipped a micro-tracker into the lining of her suitcase. 3 months later, I was sitting in the monitoring room of the Chicago PD's Economic Crimes Unit, watching on screen as her one that got away was tackled to the ground. He wasn't some elite expat professional. He was a top hunter for a Southeast Asian pig butchering syndicate. And when she called me, crying, I said only one thing. "I'm sorry, Chloe. You're the 17th victim." Chapter 1. The graceful exit. Chloe Miller announced our breakup while I was changing the litter for Nugget. Nugget is the orange tabby we had for 3 years, now fat as a propane tank. He was squatting by the litter box with a serious expression, as if supervising my work. Chloe's voice drifted out from the bedroom, light and airy, like a feather with no weight. "Ethan, we need to talk." I scooped a clump of tofu litter, thinking to myself that this brand's absorption was impressive. Nugget came over, sniffed it, and walked away in disgust. He was just like her, a bit of a clean freak. "Leo's flight gets in at 3 p.m. tomorrow," Chloe said, standing at the bedroom door, her fingers picking at the frame, a nervous habit of hers. "He's back." I straightened up, set the scooper aside, and dusted off my hands. "Oh, that's great. You were always talking about him, right?" She paused, probably not expecting me to be so calm. To be honest, I hadn't expected it either. 3 months ago, this news might have given me a heart attack. But now, I glanced at my phone, where an encrypted message had just self-destructed. The timing was perfect. What I mean is, Chloe took a deep breath, as if reciting a rehearsed line. "I think this is it for us. Now, we missed out on too many years." "Got it," I nodded. "The one that got away is back. Guess the consolation prize can see himself out." Her expression tightened. The remark was a little sharp, but I couldn't help it. 3 years together, ending with a metaphor. How literary. That's not what I meant. Her voice softened, taking on that familiar, guilt-laced tone. "Ethan, you're a great guy. You really are. But for these past 3 years, I've always felt like a part of me was empty. Now that he's back, you have to fill it." I finished for her, walking to the kitchen to wash my hands. "Right, I understand." The water rushed from the faucet. I stared at the back of my hands, thinking about the files I'd reviewed at the precinct 3 months ago. Leo Vance, or rather, the man using his name, had such a gentle smile in the video call clips. So gentle you could wring honey out of it. "You don't have anything to say?" Chloe followed me to the kitchen doorway, leaning against the frame to watch me. I turned off the water and grabbed a paper towel. "Say what?" "Wish you all the best." Too fake. "Say I'll wait for you to come back." Even faker. I turned to face her. "Chloe, we're adults. Let's not turn this into a scene from a Lifetime movie. You want to go? I'm not stopping you." Her eyes turned red. For real, I wasn't imagining it. Her mascara was starting to run, so this was clearly a genuine emotional performance. "I'm sorry." Her voice cracked. "Stop." I held up a hand. "Whatever you do, don't apologize. Apologizing makes me sound like an actual victim." I pulled a corner of my mouth into a smile. "How about this? An amicable split, a clean break. Just one condition, I get Nugget." She froze. "The cat." "Yeah, the cat." I walked into the living room, where Nugget was pancaked on the sofa. I poked his belly. "You're about to start a new life. A cat would be an inconvenience. Besides, isn't Leo allergic? I remember you mentioning that." Chloe's mouth opened, but no sound came out. She had mentioned it years ago in some casual chat. "See? I have a great memory." "Okay," she finally nodded. "Nugget stays with you." The scene that followed was almost comical. She started packing, and I knelt beside her, handing her boxes. We were like a couple on the verge of divorce, dividing assets in a bizarrely cheerful atmosphere. "Are you taking this sweater?" I held up a gray turtleneck. "The one I got you for your birthday last year." She glanced at it, her eyes flickering. "You should keep it. As a memento." "Nope." I stuffed it into her suitcase. A gift is a gift. No takebacks. The truth was I was worried something might be hidden in it. The last anti-fraud training seminar mentioned that some scam syndicates use fabrics treated with special chemicals to pass messages. The probability was low, but better safe than sorry. Halfway through packing, her phone rang. The ringtone was some sad indie ballad she'd set herself, claiming it gave things a sense of ceremony. I glanced at the screen. The caller ID said Leo. Her voice immediately shifted into a softer register when she answered, the corners of her eyes softening. 3 p.m. tomorrow, right? I'll definitely be there. Oh, you don't have to pick me up. I can just drive myself. I kept my head down, folding clothes very slowly. But my ears were pricked, catching every syllable. I couldn't hear the voice on the other end, but Chloe's replies were interesting. It's fine. Ethan is being really understanding. Yes, we talked it all out. Don't worry, I'm not going to get cold feet. I almost laughed out loud. Cold feet? She really knew how to cast herself in a drama. After hanging up, her mood visibly improved. She hummed a little tune as she continued packing. I spotted a velvet box in her open makeup bag, deep blue, with the Cartier logo subtly stamped in the corner. New? I asked casually. Her hand flinched, and she quickly pushed the box deeper into the bag. Oh, yeah, a gift from a friend. From Leo? I smiled. A ring? He works fast. Her face flushed. She didn't deny it. I nodded and went back to helping her pack shoes. The red high heels were ones I'd bought with her. They pinched her feet, but she loved them. Now she was going to wear them to meet another man. Life really is a goddamn recurring joke. After over 2 hours of packing, 3 suitcases were stuffed to the brim. She stood in the middle of the living room, looking around with a slightly lost expression, as if she suddenly didn't recognize the place she'd lived in for 3 years. The rest of the little things. Can I come back for them another day? She asked tentatively. Don't, I said, pulling a few large storage bags from a drawer. Let's get it all done at once. Dragging it out isn't good for anyone. Here, I'll help you. She had a ton of miscellaneous trinkets, hair ties, earrings, unopened face masks, a half-empty bottle of perfume. I packed them one by one, with the careful precision of a bomb disposal expert. I was actually looking for something. 3 months ago, Leo, or the man impersonating him, had sent her a book of poetry via international mail. On the surface, it was just a gift, but the anti-fraud unit had intercepted similar packages where the pages had been treated with a chemical that revealed contact information under a UV light. That book wasn't her luggage. It wasn't on the bookshelf either. By the way, I asked, feigning casualness, what about that book of Yeats' poems Leo sent you? You're not taking it. She was checking her wallet and IDs, not even looking up. Oh, that one. I lent it to Ashley a while back. Forgot to get it back. Ashley was her best friend. I made a mental note. By the time everything was packed, it was already 11 at night. Chloe stood in the entryway with her suitcases. Nugget was perched on the shoe cabinet, watching her, his tail swaying slowly. Well, I'm going, she said. I'll walk you down. I picked up the heaviest suitcase. What's in this thing? It weighs a ton. Just some books and stuff, she said, her gaze shifting away. I didn't press her, but through a small gap on the side of the suitcase, I saw a flash of metal. It was the corner of the Cartier box. I hefted the case, estimating its weight. If it was just a ring, it shouldn't be this heavy, unless there was more than just a ring in the box. We didn't speak on the way down in the elevator. The mirrored stainless steel reflected our images. Her, head down, scrolling on her phone. Me, staring at the changing floor numbers. The air was so quiet you could hear the hum of the elevator cables. On the ground floor, I carried the suitcase out of the elevator. She took the handle from me, her fingers brushing against mine before pulling back as if shocked. Ethan, she suddenly looked up at me. For these 3 years. Thank you. Under the streetlights, her eyes were shining. It could have been tears, or it could have been the reflection of the lamps. I suddenly remembered the night 3 years ago when she'd agreed to be my girlfriend. She had looked up at me just like this, her eyes as bright as if they held stars. Those stars were real back then. Now, who could say? Don't mention it. I waved a hand. It was mutually beneficial. You got companionship, and I learned how to take care of someone. Oh, and I also learned how to fix a toilet and change a light bulb. Level of my life skills. Not a bad deal. She laughed, and as she laughed, a tear rolled down her cheek. You always know what to say. That's me. I smiled back. You should get going. Traffic's gonna get bad. She turned and pulled the suitcases away, the wheels rumbling over the concrete. After a few steps, she turned back. Hey, which terminal is he at tomorrow? O'Hare, T5. I pulled out my phone and pretended to check. Probably T5. That's the international one. But they've been doing construction over there. You should probably double check before you leave. Okay, she nodded, giving me one last hard look as if trying to memorize my face. Then she turned, and the sound of the wheels faded into the distance. I stood there until her taillights disappeared around the corner. The night air was a little chilly. I rubbed my arms and headed back into the building. As the elevator ascended, I pulled my phone from my pocket, unlocked it, and opened an app with a black icon. The screen lit up with a map, a small red that was moving at a speed of about 40 miles per hour. The location was precise, the signal strong. I leaned against the elevator wall and let out a long breath. On the heaviest suitcase, tucked inside the wheel well, I had placed a magnetic tracker the size of a sesame seed. I'd stuck it there 3 hours ago while she was on the phone. It was special issue from the precinct, waterproof, shockproof, with a 30-day battery life. More than enough. The elevator dinged. I stepped out, and Nugget was waiting at the door. He let out a meow. All right, I said, rubbing his head. The show's over. Time to get to work. I went inside and closed the door. From the top shelf of the bookcase, I retrieved another phone, an encrypted department-issued one. I powered it on, entered the passcode, and connected to the secure network. A new message popped up. The professor's syndicate has confirmed entry into the country. Your reported target, Chloe Miller, is listed as a potential victim. Operation codename, Wake Up Call. Continue peripheral observation. Stay safe. I replied, Roger. Tracker activated. After sending the message, I walked to the window. The city was a glittering tapestry of lights, the traffic a flowing river. I wondered where her car was now. If she was sending Leo a voice message, her voice soft and sweet, saying see you tomorrow. I took out my personal phone and opened WhatsApp. Her chat was still pinned to the top. The last message was from this afternoon. What do you want for dinner? I could come home early and cook. I hadn't replied. No need to now. My finger hovered over the screen for a few seconds before I tapped her profile picture and went to her Instagram. Her latest post was from 10 minutes ago. A photo of the city at night with a caption, a new beginning. There were already a dozen comments. Mutual friend were asking, what's happening? Moving? Congrats. She hadn't replied to any of them. I smiled to myself, exited the app, and turned off the phone. Nugget rubbed against my leg. I bent down and picked him up. He was warm and purring loudly. Well, buddy, I said, scratching under his chin, your mom's off to her new beginning. The cat squinted, looking blissful. And I walked over to the balcony, watching the flashing navigation lights of the distant airport. We got to start our work. In the night sky, a plane was slowly descending, the lights on its wings blinking on and off. Like a falling star. I wondered if it was his flight. It didn't matter. When the sun came up tomorrow, the game would officially begin. And me? I'm not great at much, but when I play a game, I'm serious. Very, very serious. Chapter 2. Cracks in the Facade. 3 days after Chloe left, Nugget went on a hunger strike. It wasn't a total refusal to eat. He'd just become incredibly picky. He used to devour a bowl of kibble in seconds. Now, I had to follow him around with the bowl like a supplicant, and only then would he grudgingly chew a few pieces, all while giving me a look that said, you humans are so needy. Look, buddy, I reasoned with him, crouching by his cat bed. I'm sad your mom left you too, but you gotta eat. Where else will you get the energy for all this moping? Nugget rolled over, presenting me with his backside. Right? He gets it from her, that attitude. I pulled out my phone and opened the black icon app. The red dot was stationary over a high-end apartment building in the West Loop. It hadn't moved in over 30 hours. Looked like she was all settled in. Just then, the encrypted phone vibrated. It was a message from Detective Russo, my contact at the precinct. He was an old-school detective in his 50s, looked like a kindly grandpa from a Hallmark movie, but he was a wolf when he was on a case. Got the file on the real Leo Vance. Russo's text was brief. Died in a car crash in Melbourne 3 years ago. DOA. This guy is an imposter. I stared at the screen for a moment, then went out to the balcony and lit a cigarette. The wind was strong tonight. It took 3 tries with a lighter. A fake. I'd suspected as much, but having it confirmed still felt like a punch to the gut. Not for me, but for Chloe. The poor, stupid girl had been waiting all these years for a ghost, only to get a knockoff. I was halfway through the cigarette when my personal phone buzzed. It was a text from Chloe with a picture attached, a selfie of her and Leo. The background was a floor-to-ceiling window in that West Loop high-rise, overlooking a river view that sparkled like scattered diamonds. She was nestled in his arms, smiling from ear to ear. The caption read, "Reunited, and it feels so good." I zoomed in on the photo. Leo was a good-looking guy, no doubt. Strong nose, deep-set eyes, a dimple when he smiled. He was even more handsome than in the video clips, the kind of guy your parents would describe as a fine young man. But his eyes were wrong. I've seen the way someone who truly loves you looks at you. 3 years ago, when Chloe had her appendix out, I stayed with her all night. When she woke up the next morning and saw me, her eyes were as soft as melted chocolate. In the photo, the way Leo looked at the camera was like he was shooting a cologne ad. The affection was there, but it was too perfect, too practiced, like it came from a template. I replied to her post, "Nice view. What building is that?" 2 minutes later, she texted back, "The Sterling Shores. Leo bought it. He's putting it in my name." I nearly choked on my cigarette. The Sterling Shores, one of the most expensive properties in the West Loop, with condos starting in the millions. In her name? They'd been reunited for 3 days, and he was already buying her a condo? These scam syndicates were really splashing out. No, wait. I stubbed out the cigarette and texted Russo. Check property record for the Sterling Shores. See if there have been any recent, unusual transactions. Russo replied almost instantly. Already did. The unit's owner is a 62-year-old man named Walter Reed, arrested last month for running a Ponzi scheme. The property is currently seized by the feds. I stared at the text and laughed. A classic bait and switch. He was wooing her with a frozen asset. He probably showed Chloe the place with a copied key. Or maybe it was just a stage model unit. As I was thinking, Chloe sent a voice message. I played it, and her voice was sickly sweet. "Ethan," Leo said, "he's in commodities trading in Australia. And there's this amazing investment opportunity right now, with an annual return of over 20%. Do you want to hear about it? He said since you're my friend, he could get you in on it." I held down the record button, waited 5 seconds, and then said, "No thanks. All my money is tied up in CDs." After sending it, I tossed the phone onto the sofa and stared at the ceiling. A 20% annual return. Commodities. The classic scam cocktail, a recipe that hadn't changed in a decade. But people still fell for it, one after another. Nugget padded over, hopped onto the sofa, and nudged my hand with his head. I scratched under his chin, and he purred contentedly. "See," I said to the cat, "your mom's about to get scammed again. This time, she's going to lose everything." Nugget just squinted, the picture of indifference. That night, I stayed up compiling a file on Leo, or whatever his real name was. Russo sent over more intel. The fake Leo had a history of frequent, short-term entries and exits in several Southeast Asian countries over the past 3 years. No official employment record, but his bank statements showed large sums of money flowing in and then quickly being dispersed into smaller accounts. Textbook money laundering. At 2 a.m., as I was staring blankly at my computer screen, the monitoring software pinged an alert. Chloe's phone was active on a call. I put on my headphones. Her voice came through the encrypted line. The background was noisy, like a restaurant. "Dad, it's totally legitimate. It's Leo, what's not to trust? We grew up together. I know investing has risks, but this is different. It's a project backed by the Australian government." I listened, my fingers tapping a rhythm on the desk. The person on the other end was probably her dad, Mr. Miller. I'd met him a few times. He was a sharp guy, a retired high school history teacher who'd taken up day trading in his retirement, usually losing more than he made. "Oh, Dad, why are you so conservative? This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Leo said we'll get our principal back in 3 months, max. After that, it's pure profit." Mr. Miller seemed to be hesitating. Chloe upped the pressure. "Look, how about this? I'll put in $10,000 of my own money to start, okay? If it pays out, then you can invest." The call ended. I took off my headphones, rubbing my temples. $10,000 was no small sum for her. She made about $8,000 a month. That was more than a year's savings. Stupid. So stupid. But does fortune really favor the foolish? Not likely. More often than not, the foolish just get fleeced. The next day, I drove out to her parents' house in the suburbs. I didn't call ahead. just showed up with a gift basket from Whole Foods. Mr. Miller answered the door and looked surprised to see me. Ethan, what are you doing here? I was in the neighborhood. Just wanted to see how you and Mrs. Miller were doing, I said with my most harmless smile. Mrs. Miller came out of the kitchen, her apron dusted with flour. She was making homemade chili. Seeing me, her expression turned awkward. Ethan, dear, about Chloe. I know. I cut in gently. We broke up. It's okay, it was for the best. I almost impressed myself with how magnanimous I sounded. Mr. Miller had me sit down and pour me a cup of tea. The tea leaves slowly unfurled in the hot water, like something waking up. Mr. Miller, I said after a sip, trying to sound casual, how's the stock market treating you these days? He sighed. Don't ask. I'm underwater on 2 different tech stocks. Maybe it's time to try something else? I suggested. There are a lot of investment options out there, but you have to be careful. A buddy of mine at the bank says they're seeing a ton of fraud cases lately, all promising ridiculously high returns. Mrs. Miller came over with a bowl of cornbread, shaking her head. Isn't that the truth? Our neighbor, Mr. Henderson, lost $30,000 last month on some senior living investment opportunity. The whole thing just vanished. Exactly, I set my cup down. And you have to be extra careful when it's someone you know. Sometimes the closer you are to the person, the less you question things, and that's how you get burned. Mr. Miller gave me a long, searching look. Ethan, have you heard something? No, I waved my hand. Just making conversation. Oh, by the way, my friend from the bank gave me these anti-fraud pamphlets. You two should take a look when you have a chance. I placed a stack of colorful brochures on the coffee table. The top one had bold letters. Beware of high-yield investment scams. Mr. Miller picked one up and flipped through it without a word. When I was leaving, Mrs. Miller insisted on packing me a container of her chili. It's your favorite, she said. I took the Tupperware. It was still warm. Mrs. Miller, I said at the door, turning back. If Chloe mentions any kind of investment to you, just ask a lot of questions. Do your own research. When it comes to money, it's always better to be safe than sorry. She nodded, and I saw a flicker of understanding in her eyes. I had just gotten into my car when my phone rang. It was Chloe, and her tone was sharp. Ethan, did you go to my parents' house? News travels fast. I was nearby, dropped something off. I said, buckling my seatbelt. Could you please just stay out of my business? Her voice rose. I know you're upset, but you don't have to be like this. What's the point of bad-mouthing me to my parents? What did I say? I asked calmly. You know what you said. She took a sharp breath. Leo's project is completely legitimate. I've seen the contracts, the documents from the Australian government. What do you know about it to be spreading rumors? I don't know anything, I said honestly. But I do know that if there was a guaranteed 20% annual return, the big banks would have devoured it already. It wouldn't be offered to regular people like us. There was silence on the other end. A few seconds later, she said, Ethan, you just can't stand to see me happy. Then she hung up. I stare at my phone's dark screen. Fina, I can't stand to see you happy. I tossed the phone onto the passenger seat and started the car. As I drove out of the subdivision, I saw a new sign at the entrance gate with a picture of a cartoon police officer pointing at the words, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Maybe, but there are always people who believe they'll be the lucky ones to catch the golden ticket. Back home that evening, I opened a can of wet food for Nugget. He didn't put up a fuss this time, gobbling it down. It seemed his period of mourning was over. Life for a cat must go on. I sat at my computer and opened the monitoring program. Chloe's phone was located at her new home, the so-called Sterling Shores condo. The call log showed she'd spent the afternoon calling several friends. The script was the same. Leo has a great project, one in. 2 of her friends had agreed. One said she'd invest $5,000, the other $8,000. Unbelievable. She was already recruiting for them. Just then, the encrypted phone vibrated again. Russo had sent an audio file with a message. Intercepted call from Leo's overseas number this afternoon. It's in a dialect, but we got it translated. I opened the file. First, there's a burst of static, then a man's voice. It was Leo, but his tone was completely different. It was slick with a hard edge. He was speaking a dialect I didn't recognize, but there were translated subtitles at the bottom of the screen. The pig is fattened up. It's time for the slaughter. This one's high quality, has plenty of friends and family we can pull in. Yeah, give her a little taste first, a small payout. That'll make her work harder for us. The audio was short, only 30 seconds. I listened to it once, then again. Then I lit a cigarette, but I didn't smoke it. I just watched it burn. The ash grew long, curled, and finally fell onto my desk. Pig. Slaughter. They called their victims pigs, and the scam a slaughter. And Chloe, the woman I had known for 3 years, loved for 3 years, and now didn't know whether to pity or hate, had become the fattest pig in their sty. High quality. I crushed the cigarette and typed a message on the encrypted phone. Evidence received. Requesting 24-hour surveillance on Leo. He's going to make a move soon. Russo replied, "It's arranged. Watch your back. Don't get made." I didn't reply, just turn off the phone. The night outside was as dark as ink. In the distance, neon lights flickered red and green, spelling out advertisements. The biggest and brightest was for a real estate developer. Find your home. Find your happiness. Happiness. I suddenly remembered 3 years ago when Chloe and I went to see our first apartment together. It was an old place, the paint peeling, but it had a huge balcony that flooded half the living room with sunlight. She stood on the balcony, spread her arms, and turned to me, saying, "Ethan, when we have our own home, it has to have a big balcony." I said, "Okay." We eventually did get a place with a balcony. This place, now occupied by just me and a cat. The succulents she planted are still out there. They've grown leggy, tall and thin, like a group of animals craning their necks, waiting for something. I got up and went to the balcony to water them. The water soaked into the soil and quickly disappeared. My phone vibrated again. I pulled it out. Chloe had posted on Instagram. A 9-photo grid, all selfies with Leo. At dinner, shopping, at the movies. The caption, "Happiness, long overdue, has finally arrived." Dozens of likes and comments flooded in. "So sweet. Jealous. When's the wedding?" I scrolled past it without liking it. Just as I was about to turn off the phone, a new notification popped up. A direct message from Chloe. It was a screenshot of a digital contract, an investment confirmation. Investment amount, $10,000. Her message read, "Ethan, I know you don't believe in this, but I've really found the right person this time. In 3 months, I'll have made $2,000. I'll take you out to dinner then, your choice of restaurant." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I replied with one word, "Okay." After that, I put my phone on silent and left it on the sofa. Nugget, full and content, jumped up and curled into my lap. I stroked his fur, and he started purring again. "Nugget," I said, "your mom wants to buy me dinner." The cat yawned. "But I have a feeling," I continued, "that I'll be the one buying. And it wouldn't be dinner. It would be a prison cafeteria lunch." Outside, an ambulance sped by, its siren wailing, red and blue lights flashing like the city's frantic pulse. The night was still long. The game had just begun. Chapter 3. Setting the trap. A week after Chloe invested her $10,000, she sent me a text. It was a screenshot of some official-looking investment portal, showing her account balance had increased by $200. Her message, "See? First payout came through. I told you this was different." I stared at the screenshot, zooming in. The website design looked professional enough, but the URL was strange. A legitimate investment platform would use a Gomor or domain. This one was a top, followed by a random string of letters. It was a classic phishing site template. You could buy one for $30. I replied, "Congratulations. That's a great return." She responded instantly, "Right?" And Leo said, "This is just the beginning. By the way, have you cashed out those CDs yet? You should move that money over here and start earning with us." There it was. The next step in a pig butchering scam. Give the victim a small taste of profit, and once they're hooked, convince them to invest more. Chloe had become their unpaid, enthusiastic salesperson, driven purely by the belief that she was helping people. I switched to my encrypted phone and messaged Russo. "The fish is on the hook," requesting a $50,000 fund for the sting. "I'm going in." Russo's reply was quick. "Approved. Be careful. They might already be suspicious of you." "Understood." I put the phone down and stared at my computer screen. Nugget jumped onto the desk and sat squarely on my keyboard, typing a line of gibberish. I lifted him off, and he meowed in protest. "Don't start," I said. "Your dad's got to get into character." Step 1. Build the persona. I logged into a dormant college alumni group on Facebook. The group's name was still Class of 15 Forever, but it was now mostly a wasteland of MLM pitches and political memes. The last real conversation had been 6 months ago about kindergarten recommendations. I cleared my throat and began to type. Hey everyone, quick question. My family just sold my grandparents' old house, and I came into some money. Nothing crazy, maybe $250,000. The interest rates at the bank are a joke. Anyone have any solid investment tips? I hit post and watched the screen. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. 30. The group exploded. Whoa, Ethan, hiding in plain sight. $250,000 is nothing crazy? Way to humble brag. When are you buying us all around? Dude, can I borrow a 20? I smiled. The reaction was authentic, enthusiastic. Perfect. But the fish I was really trying to hook hadn't surfaced yet. 10 minutes later, I got a private message from Chloe. Ethan, you sold your grandparents' house? Yeah, the old place finally sold, I replied. Now I'm trying to figure out what to do with the cash. You should really consider Leo's project, she immediately shot back. I told him about your situation, and he said he can get you a special rate, 25% annual return. 25%. 5 points higher than a rate. It seemed I was a fatter fish in their eyes. Is it safe? I feigned hesitation. That's a lot of money. I need to be careful. Totally safe. Leo said it's backed by the Australian government, fully insured. If you're worried, you can start with 50,000 and see how it goes. 50,000. The numbers matched up. I thought for a moment, then replied, okay, let me think about it. Can you set up a dinner with Leo? I'd like to talk to him in person. No problem. She replied so fast, I could practically feel her excitement through the screen. She probably thought she was doing a great thing, helping her old friend get rich while also boosting her boyfriend's numbers. A win-win, except she was on both the winning and losing sides. 3 days later, I met Leo at a high-end sushi restaurant. I picked the place. It was expensive enough to feel exclusive, but not so over the top that it would seem like I was trying too hard. Just right for $1 million investment meeting. I arrived early and sat in the private tatami room, browsing the menu. Leo was punctual. He wore a crisp white shirt, black trousers, and a meticulously styled haircut. On his wrist was an Omega watch. I glanced at it. The watch itself was real, but the wear on the band didn't match the pristine condition of the case. It was likely a second-hand or a Frankenstein watch. Ethan, he extended a hand, his smile as polished as a bank teller's. Chloe talks about you all the time. I stood and shook his hand. His palm was dry, with calluses on the pads of his fingers in odd places. Not from writing, but more like from operating some kind of device. Mr. Vance? I smiled back. Good to finally meet you. We sat down and ordered. He chose a bottle of sake and poured me a glass. The cups clinked together with a clean, sharp sound. Chloe mentioned you were interested in our project. He began, getting straight to the point. I took a sip of sake. Leaving money in the bank feels like a waste, but you know how it is. A lot of scams out there. A guy has to be careful. Understand completely, he nodded, pulling a tablet from his briefcase. This is the official prospectus for our project, Australian Mineral Resource Development, a government-supported initiative. Here are the permits, the certificates of qualification. He swiped through a series of images on the screen. It was all very convincing, filled with official-looking English text and the Australian government's coat of arms. But I noticed one small detail. A date on one of the certificates read September 31st, 2022. September has 31 days. I didn't call him on it. I just kept looking. Our first round of funding is already closed, but we've just opened the second, Leo said, his delivery smooth as silk. I pulled some strings to get Chloe a spot. Since you're her friend, I'm making a special exception for you as well. I really appreciate that, I said, putting on a grateful expression. And the return is really 25%. A guaranteed 25% minimum, with no ceiling. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. Honestly, this project isn't typically open to individual investors. We usually work with institutions. But Chloe asked, so I'm making an exception. Exception. He'd said it twice, emphasizing how rare this opportunity was. What's the buy-in? I asked. 50,000 minimum, with a cap of 300,000, he paused. But my personal advice, if you're going to invest, go big. An opportunity like this only comes around once in a lifetime. I nodded and picked up a piece of salmon sashimi. It was fresh, but it tasted like nothing. How do we handle the contract? I asked. It's all digital, signed online. The funds are wired directly to a regulated trust account in Australia, fully traceable. He pulled up another page. See, here are the credentials for the regulating bank, and here's the fund flow chart. I studied it intently, playing the part of a genuinely interested investor. All right, I put down my chopsticks. I'll start with 50,000. If the returns are stable after a month, I'll put in the rest. Leo's eyes lit up, though he quickly masked his excitement. A wise decision. When would be a good time to sign? Tomorrow, I said. The money is in a mutual fund right now. I need to liquidate it. Excellent. He raised his glass. To our partnership. We made small talk. He asked about my job, and I told him a fabricated story about working in cybersecurity and looking to get into investing. He nodded frequently, telling me I had a good head on my shoulders. Halfway through our meal, Chloe arrived. She was wearing a new dress, a Chanel, but the shoulder seam was slightly off, a good knockoff. She looked a little uncomfortable when she saw me. Ethan, she sat down. How's the meeting going? Great. I poured her some tea. Leo is very professional. I've decided to invest. Her eyes instantly brightened. Really? That's wonderful. I told you it was legit. Yes, I looked at her. Thanks for the introduction. She said it was nothing, of course. Then she naturally linked her arm through Leo's, resting her head on his shoulder. Leo patted her hand gently. Watching them, I suddenly remembered 3 years ago when Chloe and I had eaten at this same restaurant. She sat across from me, and I peeled shrimp for her. She'd smiled and said, Ethan, you're so good to me. When you peel enough shrimp, your fingers retain a faint fishy smell that doesn't wash off easily. Oh, Ethan, Chloe suddenly remembered something. You mentioned Nugget wasn't eating well. Should you take him to the vet? He's fine now, I said. He probably just missed you. He's adjusted. Her expression darkened for a second. Leo cut in. Who's Nugget? The cat we used to have, Chloe explained. He's with Ethan now. I'm not much of a cat person. Too much fur. Chloe quickly added, me neither. We just kind of ended up with him. I sipped my tea and said nothing. After dinner, Leo insisted on picking up the check. I thanked him, and he said it was nothing, that we were all on the same team now. Outside the restaurant, the evening air was cool. Chloe handed Leo a jacket, and he put it on without a second thought. It was her jacket, a men's style but a size too small. The fabric strained across his shoulders. Ethan, how are you getting home? Chloe asked. The L train, I said. We can give you a ride, Leo offered politely. No thanks, it's out of your way, I waved. Talk to you tomorrow. They drove off in a white Audi, license plate ending in 668. I memorized it and pulled out my encrypted phone to run the plate. As expected, it was a rental, $800 a day. I stood on the sidewalk and lit a cigarette. I was halfway through it when Russo called. How did it go? He asked. He took the bait, I said. Signing the papers tomorrow. 50 grand. The finance team is ready. We'll be tracking the funds from the moment they move, Russo said, then paused. Intel just confirmed that during your dinner, Leo's phone transmitted a data burst. The receiving IP is in Southeast Asia. Right. And one more thing, Russo said. Chloe's parents mortgaged their house yesterday. Took out a $150,000 loan. Said it was for a retirement investment. My fingers tightened, almost dropping the cigarette. What? They mortgaged the house, Russo repeated. The loan cleared this afternoon and was wired out immediately. The receiving account is overseas. We're trying to trace it, but it's a long shot. I said nothing. The wind blew, scattering ash all over my coat. Ethan, Russo's voice came through the phone. I'm here, I said. Keep monitoring. Leo mentioned setting up a meeting with the main guy next week. They're probably getting ready to close the net. Stay safe. I know. I hung up and crushed the cigarette under my shoe. I looked up at the sky, but the city's light pollution was so bad I couldn't see a single star. My phone vibrated. A text from Chloe. Ethan, thank you for trusting Leo. You're going to make a fortune. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I replied, yeah, hope so. I put the phone away and walked towards the train station. I passed a pet store with a litter of kittens playing in the window. One of them was an orange tabby that looked just like Nugget as a kitten. I stopped and watched for a moment. A store employee came out. Sir, would you like to come in? This little orange one is very friendly. No thanks, I said. I've already got one at home. Well, how about some treats for him? The employee persisted. I thought about it, then went inside and bought a box of salmon treats. Nugget had been looking a little thin lately. He could use them. As I walked out with the treats, my phone vibrated again. It was Leo. Ethan, next week I'm going to introduce you to the big boss of our project, the real shot caller. It's a rare opportunity. Be ready. I replied, great. Thanks for the introduction. After sending the text, I silenced my phone. The train arrived, and I squeezed into a crowded car. The air was thick and stuffy, a mix of 100 different smells. I held onto a pole, watching the advertisements flash by outside the window. One of them was a public service announcement. Investing has risks. Be vigilant. The words were big and bright, but it seemed like no one was looking. When I got home, Nugget was waiting by the door. I opened the treats, and he devoured them, meowing loudly, his tail straight up like an antenna. Easy, boy, I said, stroking his head. I'm not going to take them from you. He ignored me, his face buried in the food. After feeding him, I opened my laptop. The monitoring program showed Chloe's phone was back at the Sterling Shores. The audio log indicated she was on the phone with her best friend, her voice buzzing with excitement. It's totally legit. Ethan just invested $50,000. You have to get in on this. Ashley, this is a once-in-a-lifetime chance. I muted the sound. On my encrypted phone, Russo had sent the latest case file. The number of confirmed victims had risen to 7, with total losses exceeding $300,000. The syndicate behind Leo was estimated to be around 20 people, operating primarily out of Southeast Asia, with local contacts in the States. I scrolled through the file and saw a photo. It was Leo, but he looked different. He was darker, thinner, and his eyes had a harder edge. He was standing in front of some kind of compound, surrounded by high walls and barbed wire, with armed guards at the gate. The caption read, 2021 Southeast Asia Scam Compound. Codename Pusher. A pusher. The lowest level grunts in the scamming world, the ones who cast a wide net for potential victims. Looks like he'd gotten a promotion. Now he was back in the States, personally fattening the pigs. I shut the laptop and went to take a shower. As the hot water streamed down, I closed my eyes and wondered what Chloe was doing. Was she and Leo planning their future, deciding where to buy a house, how many kids to have? She might even be calculating her commission, if she knew that in these syndicates, recruiters get a kickback. For a $10,000 investment, she'd probably get $500. $500. The price of selling out her parents, her friends, and 3 years of a relationship. The water was scalding, turning my skin red. When I got out of the shower, Nugget was already asleep on the sofa, his belly rising and falling peacefully. I sat next to him and turned on the TV. I flipped through the channels and landed on a rerun of Planet Earth. David Attenborough's voice filled the room. Spring has arrived, and with it, a time of renewal and rebirth. On the screen, a herd of wildebeest was migrating. Predators pursued them from behind, and a crocodile-infested river lay ahead. Still, they charged forward relentless. I watched for a long time, until the credits rolled. I turned off the TV, and the living room fell into darkness. The only sound was Nugget's purr, rising and falling, like the city's breath in the dead of night. Anxious, restless, but unstoppable. I picked up my encrypted phone and sent one last message to Russo. Next week's meeting, I'll be wearing a wire. If things go south, move in. Russo replied, understood. Take care. Take care. I put the phone on my nightstand and lay down. There was a crack in the ceiling, a small one, but it had always been there. For 3 years, I kept meaning to call someone to fix it, but I always forgot. No need to fix it now. I wouldn't be living here much longer anyway. I closed my eyes. My dreams were filled with images of wildebeest crossing the river. The current was strong, and the crocodiles waited with open jaws. Some made it across. Some didn't. It was that simple. Chapter 4. Closing the net, the big boss Leo mentioned turned out to be a bald guy with a thick gold chain. Completely bald. Under the warm lights of the private dining room, his head gleamed like a peeled, hard-boiled egg. He was in the head seat, wearing a loud Hawaiian shirt unbuttoned to his chest, revealing half of a dragon tattoo. The dragon's eyes were wide, staring right at his heart. It was unnerving. Mr. Cole, The bald guy stood up to shake my hand, his grip strong enough to crack walnuts. Heard a lot about you. Leo here says you're a real up-and-comer. I smiled and returned the handshake, thinking, that's a high-quality temporary tattoo. The edges aren't even peeling. Leo was standing beside him, grinning. Rico, this is the guy I was telling you about, Ethan Cole. My girlfriend's old friend. He's one of us. Good, good. Glad to have you. Rico clapped me on the shoulder, nearly knocking me over. Seat. Nobody leaves sober tonight. The private room was huge, big enough for a dozen people, but tonight it was just the three of us. The table was already covered with food, lobster, abalone, steamed grouper, and a massive pot of chipino in the center. A quick glance told me this spread cost at least $5,000. They were pulling out all the stops. Mr. Cole, Rico poured me a shot of what looked like top-shelf whiskey, Macallan 18. I hear you're looking to up your investment? That's the plan. I took the glass. The $50,000 I put in last month did well. I'm thinking of going all in with the rest. How much? Rico's eyes gleamed. $250,000, I said. The house sale brought in $300 total. I'm keeping $50 liquid for emergencies. The rest is ready to invest. Rico and Leo exchanged a look, and I saw a flash of pure avarice in their eyes. I'd seen that look before on the faces of shoppers on Black Friday when the doors open. I like it. Rico raised his glass. I love a man who knows what he wants. To us. 3 shots later, the atmosphere had warmed considerably. Rico started bragging about his mines in Australia, his factories in Southeast Asia, the foreign dignitaries he had on speed dial. Leo played the part of the loyal subordinate, chiming in with supporting details. They had their routine down cold. I just listened and nodded, toasting when appropriate, laughing at his jokes. All the while, my mind was cataloging his words. That line is from the standard fraud script, page 3, paragraph 12. That one is from page 5, paragraph 8. They had it memorized. They could have written the textbook. Halfway through the meal, Rico's phone rang. He glanced at the screen, his expression shifted slightly, and he stood up. Excuse me, I have to take this. He walked out with his phone. Leo took the opportunity to lean in close, his voice low. Ethan, Rico's a straight shooter, but he's a good guy to have on your side. You're getting good with him. The sky's the limit. I can tell. I poured him another shot. By the way, Leo, you mentioned government permits for the project. Could I see those again? Since I'm investing a larger amount this time, I want to be thorough. Of course. Leo pulled out his tablet and opened the file. Here's the latest. I took the tablet, my fingers swiping across the screen. My eyes were on the documents, but my peripheral vision was on Leo's phone, which he'd left face down on the table. When Rico had stepped out, I saw Leo's fingers move under the table. He was likely sending a message. Is this word spelled correctly? I asked suddenly, pointing to a spot on the screen. Let me see. Leo leaned in to look. At that exact moment, his phone screen lit up. A WhatsApp notification preview popped up. The pig is on the hook. We can slaughter tonight. The sender, Rico. The screen went dark. It was visible for less than 2 seconds. But I saw it. Leo looked up from the tablet, smiling. Nope, that's right. It's a technical term. That's how it's spelled. Oh, my mistake. I handed the tablet back. Sorry, my technical jargon is a little rusty. No worries, Leo said, his smile widening as he put the tablet away. The pig. On the hook. Slaughter tonight. I picked up my glass, my hand perfectly steady. The whiskey swirled, creating tiny ripples. Leo, I said, this one's to you. Thanks for giving me this opportunity. Any time. He clinked his glass against mine. We're all partners now. We're all going to get rich together. We drank. The whiskey burned, a trail of fire from my throat to my stomach. Rico returned, his expression back to normal. He sat down, glanced at Leo, and Leo gave a barely perceptible nod. Mr. Cole, Rico poured me another drink. Did you bring the contract? Let's get it signed tonight. Strike while the iron is hot. I did. I pulled the contract from my bag, a fake one prepared by Russo, more convincing than the real thing. But I need to read it over one more time. It's a big amount. Of course, take your time. Rico waved his hand magnanimously. Our project can stand up to any scrutiny. I pretended to read the contract, flipping through the pages. In reality, I was checking the time, 8:47 p.m. Russo had said the tech team had a lock on this room, and there were at least 6 undercover officers outside. But it wasn't time to move in yet. Rico was small fry. The bigger fish hadn't shown himself. Looks good. I put the contract down and took out a pen. Where do I sign? Here, and here, Leo pointed. Sign, and then a thumbprint. I signed my name and pressed my thumb to the ink pad. My movements were slow, deliberate, like I was performing a ceremony. When I finished the last page, Rico started clapping. Excellent. A man of action. From this day forward, we're brothers in arms. He pulled out a portable card reader. So, when can we expect the funds? I looked at him, then at Leo. They were both staring at me, their eyes filled with the same desperate hope as lottery players waiting for the numbers to be called. I can transfer it now, I said, but I need to call my bank manager. A transfer this large needs his authorization. Call him now. Rico pushed his phone towards me. Use mine. On speaker. I took the phone and dialed the number Russo had given me. It was routed to a detective at the precinct, posing as a bank manager. The call connected. Mr. Davison, I said, it's Ethan Cole. That $250,000, you can release it now. I'll give you the account information. I read out the account number. On the other end, the detective played his part perfectly. Of course, Mr. Cole. Processing that now. Just to confirm, for a transfer of this size, the recipient is Australian Mineral Resource Development, correct? Correct, I said. And you understand this is an international wire to an overseas account, which cannot be reversed once processed? E-do. Very good. One moment, please. With the phone on speaker, the room was silent except for the sound of typing from the other end. Rico and Leo held their breath, their eyes glued to the phone, like hunters watching their prey step into a snare. After 30 seconds, the detective said, All right, the transfer has been initiated. The funds should arrive within 2 hours. Thank you, I said, and hung up. It's done. Rico slammed his hand on the table, stood up, and raised his glass. Mr. Cole, you are now a core partner. To us. We had another round of drinks. After this one, my head started to feel fuzzy. They had likely drugged the drink, but I had taken an antidote beforehand, courtesy of Russo. Ethan, Leo put a hand on my shoulder. You've had too much. Let me take you home. No, I'm fine. I wave him off. I can manage. Nonsense. Rico boomed. Leo, you make sure Mr. Cole gets home safely. He's our golden goose. Leo helped me out of the room. The hallway was long, the carpet soft, like walking on clouds. I leaned against him, and I could smell his cologne. It was strong, but it couldn't completely mask another scent. A faint, musty smell common in parts of Southeast Asia, a mix of sweat and cheap soap. I'd read about that smell in the intel files. It was common among the low-level pushers in the scam compounds. No hot water in the dorms. Cold showers and the cheapest bar soap money could buy. In the car, Leo asked for my address. I gave him the location of a safe house arranged by the precinct. He put it in his GPS and started driving. He was quiet on the ride, occasionally glancing at me in the rearview mirror. I kept my eyes closed, pretending to be asleep. My fingers found the emergency button on the encrypted phone in my pocket. One press, and the undercover team would swarm the car. But I couldn't press it yet. Russo said to wait for the big fish. Halfway there, my personal phone rang. It was Chloe. I hesitated for a second, then answered, putting it on speaker. Ethan. Her voice was frantic, on the verge of tears. Where are you? In the car. I slurred. What's wrong? I looked through Leo's phone. She gasped for breath. There are pictures of so many women and chat logs. He's been talking to all of them. Oh, I said. That's all you have to say. Oh, her voice climbed. Aren't you surprised? He lied to me. He's a liar. I said nothing. Leo's eyes met mine in the rearview mirror. They were cold. Ethan, I'm scared. Chloe was crying now. I confronted him, and he just lost it. He smashed my phone. I'm locked in the bedroom, and he's breaking things outside. Address, I said. What? Your address. Text it to me. My voice was suddenly clear. Now. The Sterling Shores, apartment 2301. Ethan, don't come. I think he's gone crazy. Lock your door. Don't make a sound, I said. I'm on my way. I hung up and looked at Leo in the mirror. Turn around. We're going to the Sterling Shores. Leo didn't move. Turn around. I repeated. Ethan, his voice was calm. Chloe's just being dramatic. It's nothing. I'll take you home first. I said, turn around. I sat up straight, all traces of drunkenness gone. Now, Leo stared at me in the mirror for a few seconds. Then he smiled. All right, whatever you say. He spun the car around, running 2 red lights. I held my phone, my thumb hovering over the emergency button. Ethan, Leo said suddenly, you and Chloe were pretty serious. Huh? 3 years. You'd have feelings for a dog after 3 years, I said. Is that right? He laughed. You know why she chose me? I didn't answer. Because I have more money than you, he answered his own question. Women are all the same. They go with whoever can give them more. Feelings? What are feelings worth? I didn't argue. He was right, and he was wrong. Chloe liked money, but what she loved more was the feeling of being loved, the feeling of being put on a pedestal, treated like a princess. Leo had given her that feeling, but it was a carefully packaged, mass-produced illusion. We arrived at the Sterling Shores. Leo parked in the underground garage and killed the engine. Ethan, he said without getting out, stay out of this. I'll handle Chloe. By tomorrow, she'll have forgotten all about it. Move, I said, trying the door. It was locked. Ethan, Leo turned in his seat, still smiling, but his eyes were ice. Sometimes, it's better not to know too much. You invested your money. Just sit back and collect your profits. Everything else, don't ask, don't interfere. I looked at him for 3 long seconds. Then I smiled. Leo, I said, or should I call you? By your old code name? Pusher? The color drained from his face. Kulkausi Komben Sautust Asia. On board in 2019, codename Pusher. Promoted to team leader in 2021, codename The Professor's Apprentice. Returned to the States this March with a mission to recruit new victims. I spoke slowly, enunciating every word. Am I getting that right? His hand moved towards his waistband. I was faster. I pulled out the encrypted phone and pressed the emergency button. Almost instantly, headlights from 3 or 4 surrounding cars flashed on. Doors flew open, and undercover officers rushed out, guns drawn. Police! Don't move! Leo froze. Get out of the car, I said. He didn't move. I reached over, pulled a switchblade from his waistband, and tossed it out the window. Then I opened my own door and stepped out, hands raised. Russo walked over and cuffed me, for show. He spoke in a low voice. We got Rico and his crew, but the big fish, the professor, is still in the wind. He might have been tipped off. I nodded and looked back at the car. Leo was being dragged out, slammed against the hood. He twisted his head to look at me, his eyes blazing with hatred. Cole, he screamed. You son of a bitch, you set me up. I ignored him and said to Russo, upstairs, 2301. Chloe's in danger. The key should be on him. Russo's team searched Leo, found the key, and rushed to the elevator. I stood there as Leo was forced into a squad car. He was still yelling, cursing me, cursing Chloe, cursing everyone. At the end, his curses turned to sobs, like a child who'd been beaten. No one felt sorry for him. 5 minutes later, Russo called. She's safe, but she's a wreck. You want to come up? Yeah. I went upstairs. The door to 2301 was open. The apartment was destroyed. The coffee table was overturned, a vase shattered, the TV screen cracked. Chloe was sitting on the floor, her hair a mess, a red handprint on her cheek. She saw me and stared, then let out a laugh that was more like a sob. Ethan, she said, are you a cop? No. I crouched down and draped a blanket over her shoulders. Just a consultant. So he really is a con man? Yes. Those pictures. All those other women. They're all victims, I said. You're just one of many. She dropped her head, and her shoulders began to shake. It started as a quiet whimper and grew into a full-blown, gut-wrenching wail. She cried until she couldn't breathe. I sat on the floor with her. I didn't speak, didn't touch her. I just sat there. After about 10 minutes, she looked up, her eyes swollen. My parents. They mortgaged the house. $150,000. It's all gone. I know. My best friend, my cousin, my co-workers. I got them all to invest. She grabbed my arm. Ethan, what do I do? What am I going to do? Her hand was ice cold. Cooperate with the police. Help them with the investigation. They'll try to recover the funds, I said. Whatever they can get back. They can't. She shook her head. He said the money was already moved overseas. It's gone forever. She let go of me and hugged her knees, curling into a tight ball. I looked at her and remembered 3 years ago when she would curl up just like that on the sofa while watching a scary movie, hiding in my arms. Back then she'd said, "As long as you're here, I'm not scared." I was here now, but the thing she was scared of had already happened. Russo came over. "Reporters are downstairs," he said quietly. "We need to get her down to the station to give a statement." I nodded and helped Chloe to her feet. Her legs were weak, and she stumbled. I half carried her to the elevator. The lobby was a madhouse. Cops, reporters, nosy neighbors. Camera flashes went off like a school of piranhas in a feeding frenzy. Chloe hid behind me, burying her face in my back. Russo came over and clapped me on the shoulder. "You take her to the precinct. We'll handle things here." "Got it." As I was about to lead her away, Chloe grabbed my shirt. "Ethan," her voice was barely a whisper. Did you know all along?" I didn't turn around. "When did you find out?" she asked. I was silent for a long moment. "The day he said he was coming back," I said. Her hand fell away. I turned to look at her. Her face was as white as paper, her eyes hollow. "Let's go," I said. She didn't move. She just stood there, watching Leo being put into the back of a squad car. He was looking at her too, his expression a complex mix of hatred, mockery, and something that looked almost like pity. The car drove away, its flashing red and blue lights disappearing into the night. Chloe suddenly laughed. Tears streamed down her face. "I'm such an idiot," she said. I didn't respond. "I'm such a goddamn idiot," she repeated. The wind picked up, and she shivered. I took off my jacket to give to her, but she didn't take it, and it fell to the ground. Russo picked it up and handed it to her. "Ms. Miller, let's get you in the car." She finally moved, following Russo. Before getting in, she looked back at me one last time. I'll probably remember that look for a long time. It was the look of an animal that, after being caught in a trap, turns to look at the hunter, and then accepts its fate. The car door closed. The car drove away. I stood in the cold night wind and lit a cigarette. Before I could finish it, my phone rang. A new message on the secure channel. "The professor is on the run. Retaliation is possible. You are now a high-risk target. Recommend relocation." I replied, "Understood." I looked up at the sky. There were stars tonight, a few scattered and lonely specks in the vast darkness. My phone vibrated again. A reminder from Nugget's vet. It was time for his annual shots. I smiled and put out the cigarette. Life goes on. The cat needs his shots. People need to eat. And criminals need to go to jail. Everything in its right place. Good. Chapter 5. The Final Reversal. 3 days after Leo's arrest, I got a call from Russo. "We recovered 30,000 of the 150,000 from Chloe's parents," he said, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "The rest was wired overseas. We're coordinating with Interpol, but the chances are slim." I held the phone, staring out the window. It was pouring rain, the drops drumming against the glass. "What about Chloe?" I asked. "Finished her debriefing, went home last night." Russo paused. "She's not in a good way. You think you should maybe?" "No," I said. "What would I even say? My condolences." "Husu Sigid." "Fair enough. One more thing. We've got a lead on the professor." I sat up straight. "We picked up 2 guys trying to cross the border last night. One of them cracked, said the professor has a safe house in the city, in an old complex on the north side." Russo said. "We've got it staked out, but we're not confident. This guy is slippery, knows all our tricks." "Send me the address," I said. "What are you planning?" Russo's voice was sharp with suspicion. "Just a look," I said. "Don't worry, I won't go in. Just a drive-by. Maybe I'll spot something your guys missed." Russo was quiet for a moment. "Be careful. Stay in touch." He hung up, and the address came through. The Northside Mills Complex, Building 3, Unit 302. I knew the place. An old industrial housing complex from the 80s. No security, no cameras, high tenant turnover, and neighbors who kept to themselves. It was the perfect place to disappear. I changed my clothes, getting ready to head out. Nugget followed me to the door and me out. "You stay here," I said, scratching his head. "Dad's got work to do." He rubbed against my hand, his tail bolt upright. By the time I got to the north side, the downpour had eased to a drizzle. The Mills complex was even more dilapidated than I remembered, with paint peeling off the brick walls like a bad sunburn. The courtyard was a maze of electric bikes, and clotheslines hung with damp laundry. I parked across the street and sat in my car, watching. Russo said they had eyes on the place, but I couldn't see any undercovers. They were probably hidden in nearby buildings or posing as locals. After half an hour, nothing. I was about to get out and grab a bottle of water when I saw someone. A woman, maybe in her 50s, carrying a grocery basket, coming out of Building 3. She walked with a strange, furtive energy, looking over her shoulder every few steps like a spooked rabbit. I watched her leave the complex and turn into a nearby market. After a moment's hesitation, I got out of my car and followed her. The market was crowded, the wet floor reflecting the fluorescent lights. The woman picked through vegetables, buying celery and a few potatoes. When she paid, she pulled out a thick wad of cash, all $100 bills. Who pays for groceries with a stack of hundreds? I pretended to look at fruit, keeping an eye on her. After buying her vegetables, she didn't go home. Instead, she walked to the far end of the market and went into a hardware store. The owner, a bald man, was watching TV. The woman spoke to him briefly, and he reached under the counter and handed her a black plastic bag. She took the bag, tucked it into her grocery basket, and left quickly. I noted the store's address and followed her out. She didn't go back to Building 3. She went to the back gate of the complex, where a beat-up van was parked. She opened the door, placed the basket inside, got in, and drove away. I ran back to my car and followed. The van drove slowly, circling the neighborhood for 20 minutes before pulling into a large logistics park. The park was filled with warehouses and semi-trucks. The van stopped in front of a warehouse at the very back. The woman got out, carrying the black plastic bag, and went inside. I parked at a distance and called Russo. Russo, the Mills Complex, Unit 302. It might be a decoy, I said. The professor must have moved. He's somewhere in this logistics park. Which one? I gave him the address. Don't move. Russo's voice was stern. We're on our way. I hung up and watched the warehouse. The rolling steel door was down, the windows covered with newspaper. There were 2 security cameras mounted over the entrance, positioned at clever angles. I waited in my car. The rain started coming down harder, the wipers swishing back and forth like a metronome. 10 minutes later, Russo sent a text. We're here. The white box truck at your 3 o'clock. Stay in the car. I looked over and saw it. The truck's rear door cracked open. Another 5 minutes passed, and then the warehouse door suddenly rolled up. The woman came out first, now, pulling a suitcase. A man followed her, wearing a baseball cap and a face mask, his features obscured. But I recognized his build from the intel photos. The professor was lean but broad-shouldered. They got into the van and started the engine. At the same instant, the doors of the box truck flew open and several plainclothes officers rushed out, their headlights flashing on. Police! Stop the vehicle! The van didn't stop. The driver slammed on the gas, speeding towards the exit. The officers fired, aiming for the tires. The van swerved, crashed into a parked truck, and came to a stop. The woman got out, screaming, her hands in the air. But the man stayed inside. He threw something out of the window. Smoke. It was a smoke grenade. In an instant, the area was blanketed in thick, white smoke. I heard coughing, running footsteps, chaos. I threw my car door open and ran towards the van, moving on instinct through the blinding smoke. Suddenly, someone slammed into me. I instinctively grabbed his arm. He swung at me, his fist connecting with my jaw. I grunted, but didn't let go, using my other hand to snatch the hat off his head. It fell away, revealing a man in his 30s with narrow eyes and a mole on his chin. The professor. His eyes were wild. He pulled a knife from his belt and lunged at me. I twisted away, the blade slicing through my jacket. He tried to run, but I tackled him, wrapping my arms around his waist. We hit the ground, and the knife skittered away. I pinned him down, but he fought back, his nails digging into my arm. Ethan! It was Russo's voice. Hold him! Several officers converged on us, wrestling the professor onto his stomach and cuffing him. He was still struggling, his eyes locked on me, full of hate. You're finished, he hissed. I'll remember you. Good. I gasped for breath. I'll remember you too. Leo's boss, the professor. Real name, Walter Johnson. Born 1988, from Ohio. Fled to Southeast Asia in 2017. Joined the KK compound. I recited his entire file from memory. He froze, then he laughed a cold, chilling sound. Well, look at you. Done your homework. But guess what? Your girlfriend's parents' 150 grand is sitting in my offshore account. You got me, but they'll never see that money again. I said nothing. Hurts, doesn't it? He leaned in, his voice a low whisper. I'll tell you something. That idiot Chloe, I was only going to take her for a few thousand. But she was so greedy. She roped in her own parents, had them mortgage their house. A pig like that, you have to slaughter it. It's a waste not to. I stared at him, into his triumphant eyes. Then I smiled. Walter, I said, do you know why you got caught? He frowned. Because out of that 150,000, 30,000 was our bait money, I said slowly. Every bill was marked, every serial number recorded. The second it hit your offshore account, Interpol put a freeze on it. The color drained from his face. And another thing, I continued. You thought you were safe in that warehouse? The owner of that hardware store? He's been our informant for months. The package that woman picked up for you. Fake passports and cash, right? We were watching the whole time. His lips began to tremble. As for Leo, I leaned closer to his ear. He confessed everything last night. How you forced him to come back here. How you split the profits. How you silence people who don't cooperate. I never killed anyone, he yelled. A female pusher named Amy tried to escape. You broke her legs, threw her in solitary for 3 days, and let her starve to death. I spoke each word clearly. Do you want me to read the autopsy report? He was silent, his face as white as a sheet. Russo walked over and clapped me on the shoulder. Nice work. Go get that arm looked at. I looked down and saw a long gash on my forearm. It wasn't deep, but blood had soaked through my sleeve. It's nothing, I said. Go to the hospital and get stitched up, Russo insisted. We'll take it from here. I nodded and walked back to my car. As I passed the van, I saw the woman sitting on the ground, sobbing. Next to her was the open suitcase, filled with stacks of $100 bills, the red of the currency marker dye staining the edges. This money, I asked Russo, can it be returned to the victims? We'll follow procedure, he said. We'll return what we can. I looked at the woman. What about her? An accomplice, but a victim too. They were holding her daughter hostage in the compound. Russo sighed. These bastards, they always go after the vulnerable. I didn't ask any more questions. I just got in my car. Driving to the hospital, the rain stopped. A sliver of light appeared on the horizon. At a red light, I saw my phone. 3 missed calls from Chloe. And a text. Ethan, can we meet? I didn't reply. At the ER, the doctor stitched up my arm. He said I was lucky. An inch over, and the knife would have hit an artery. I just smiled. As I was leaving the hospital, I saw someone standing by the entrance. Chloe. She lost a lot of weight. Her eyes were sunken. She looked like a piece of paper that the wind could blow away. She saw me and walked over, her steps unsteady. How did you know I was here? I asked. Russo told me you were hurt, she said, looking at my bandaged arm. Is it bad? Just a few stitches. Oh, she looked down, kicking at the pavement. Thank you. For what? Thank you. Her voice was small, for not letting me fall any deeper. I looked at her, really looked at her for the first time in a long time. There were fine lines around her eyes, a single white hair at her temple I'd never noticed before. Chloe, I said, from now on, be smarter. She nodded, and a tear fell, then another, splashing onto the concrete. The money. Can they get any of it back? Some of it, I said. The 30,000 of your parents, that was our bait money. That should be returned. The rest, we'll see. She nodded again, the tears coming faster. My parents. They disowned me. She wiped her face. They kicked me out yesterday. Said I wasn't their daughter anymore. I didn't know what to say. I deserve it. She gave a small, bitter laugh. I really, really deserve it. A taxi pulled up, and she flagged it down. Before getting in, she looked back at me. Ethan, I'm just saying, if 3 years ago I hadn't been so hung up on Leo, would we have? No, I said. She froze. Even if he hadn't come back, we would have broken up, I said calmly. The problem wasn't him. It was us. What you wanted I couldn't give you. What I could give, you didn't want. It was always going to end. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Finally, she just nodded, got in a taxi, and it drove away. The car disappeared around the corner. I stood in front of the hospital and lit a cigarette. I was halfway through it when Russo called. He's singing. Russo's voice was light, relieved. The professor gave up his entire network. 5 states, over 20 people. Interpol is moving on the offshore accounts. They've already frozen 3 of them. Good news, I said. About better news, Russo chuckled. We just got approval. The department is setting up a special anti-fraud task force. They want to bring you on as a consultant. Interested? I am. Great. We'll talk details later, Russo paused. Oh, there's a press conference this afternoon to announce the bust. You coming? No, I said. You guys can handle it. All right, take care of that arm. I hung up and crushed the cigarette. The sun was out now, the air clean and smelling of wet earth after the rain. I took a deep breath. It felt good. On the drive home, I saw that a billboard had been updated. It was a new anti-fraud PSA. A cartoon cop with the words, "Your heart can be blind, but your wallet should have 20/20 vision." I smiled. I opened the door to my apartment, and Nugget was waiting, meowing and rubbing against my legs. I picked him up. He sniffed the antiseptic on my arm and licked the bandage. It's okay, I said, rubbing his head. It's all over. He started to purr. I walked to the balcony and watered the succulents. I pruned the leggy ones, taking cuttings to propagate new plants. The little green leaves lay on a piece of newspaper, like a collection of tiny ears. My phone buzzed. A new message on the secure channel. Operation Wake Up Call is officially concluded. Thank you for your service. A foundation is being established, tentatively named the Wake Up Project. You are invited to be a founding consultant. I replied, understood. I put the phone down and looked out the window. The sky was clear now, the sunlight streaming in, warm and bright. Nugget jumped onto the windowsill and stretched out in the sun, belly up. I sat down and stroked his stomach. He opened one eye to look at me, then closed it again, drifting back to sleep. The patch of sunlight moved slowly across the room, from the windowsill to the floor, from the floor to the wall. On the wall was that small crack still there. I suddenly remembered I needed to get it fixed. I pulled out my phone and scheduled a handyman. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. Good. Life had to be lived. The cat needed to be fed, the plants watered, the house repaired. Criminals had to be caught, money recovered, people saved. Everyone has their part to play. I leaned back on the sofa and closed my eyes. The sun was warm on my face. Nugget's purr was a steady, rhythmic sound, like the city's breath on a quiet afternoon. Stable, peaceful. Finally, I could get some sleep.